our goal with this use case is to assess the impact of certain policies and certain assumptions on the global energy mix. And these are mainly related to energy efficiency improvements and climate change control policies. I think about the 1.5 degrees or the 2 degrees of the Paris Agreement. So that's the first goal. The second goal is that we want to provide an illustration of how the white toolkit can be used in similar studies. So using global energy system models or integrated assessment models, or in any case, big models that have as a scope a wide region and typically look at long-term scenarios. Yeah, so again, with this use case, the goal is to provide some long-term scenario analysis, and this we target with this policymakers and energy analysts. So we want to inform them about some possible future scenarios, and especially we want to assess and contrast the pros and cons of pushing energy efficiency versus employing other means to reduce emissions. I think of promoting renewable energy sources or deploying carbon capture and storage solutions based on that. There's another set of stakeholders that we aim to reach, and those are other modelers that work with this type of energy system models and integrated assessment models. And we would like to show them an example, like showcase how the white toolkit can be used in their context and how they can benefit from the possibility it offers. Well, insights that the white toolkit can provide to modeling experts, well, there are a lot, and they are also on different scales. Let's say for this use case, the global use case where we talk about big models, long-range analysis, I think one of the main insights that the white toolkit can provide is the possibility to disaggregate residential energy demand or residential energy use, maybe better, along many different dimensions. As to think about different type of houses, which have different level of insulations, for example. Think about different type of families that live in these houses. The white toolkit can characterize all that. And this can be very useful when a modeler is trying to build a specific scenario or to enhance their own model in order to reach a certain level of disaggregation and zoom in into a certain aspect. And so with the white toolkit, on the one hand, you can use it as a validation tool, and on the other hand, you can also use it in order to really disaggregate your data and improve the representation of residential energy use in your model. Yeah. So correct. First of all, this is a use case with a very large scope and a very long range. And we're going to use dedicated models that are specifically developed for this type of analysis. On the one hand, we have TMCN. On the other hand, we have Prometheus. And with these two models, we have a long track record of developing this type of global long-term scenarios. And so think about, for example, scenarios that lead to the IPCC assessment reports, to which we regularly contribute. So we plan to put all this expertise at use here. And as you correctly point out, if we talk about 2050, and even more so if we talk about the end of the century, there are so many things that can happen. And it's almost impossible to really cover all possible socioeconomic development. It's not something we can realistically aim for. So our goal here is to provide results that can describe some possible developments under a specific range of assumptions, and this range of assumptions will define our scenarios. And so the aim of this analysis is by no means to predict. The aim is to identify certain patterns and certain relationships and with the hope that these can be informative, especially for policymakers and for analysts, so that looking at what we aim to achieve in the long run can help to draw the path in the short term, knowing that we want to get there and that we might see under certain reasonable assumptions, certain patterns can lead us to design the short term where we can really take action in a specific way that takes into account certain possible developments. And that's a bit what we aim for. That's a bit the niche of policy that we want to influence. Yeah, so that's a great question, because it really follows from what we just discussed. And the Paris Agreement set out long-term goals, which is basically to keep the global temperature rise below 2 degrees and possibly well below 2 degrees. So we're talking about 1.5 degrees. This is a very long-range goal, but it needs to be translated into actions that we can take now in order to get there. And so again, our aim with this case study is to inform and not to predict. So we can attempt to address certain questions that are relevant in this context. So for example, countries have pledged in the Paris Agreement, so we can put all their pledges in the model and check how much is it likely that greenhouse gas emissions are really reduced if the pledges are met. Is this really compatible to stay to the goal of staying below 1.5 degrees, or is there some lack there, some gap? And even more relevant, what are the sensitivities? So what is this likelihood of staying below 1.5 degrees sensitive upon? So in practical terms, what are the parameters then that we can tweak with policy making in order to achieve further reductions, or in order to achieve the 1.5 degrees? So here we are really going for trying to provide some blueprints that can inform the design of far-reaching, high-level policies like the Paris Agreement. Yeah, so the main outputs of the type of models we are using here is the main output is basically the energy mix. So the global energy mix, which we will divide into the various sectors of the economy. So you will have power generation, you will have a transport sector, and very relevant for the Y case, you will have the residential sector. And more in general, you will have the building. So not only the residential, but the commercial sector as well. You will have industry, also a very big energy user. And so we will break down the energy mix in all these sectors and analyze it. And that's where we want to see these patterns that we talked about. Yeah, and we will do that under different scenarios, which will entail certain decarbonization pathways. And it might we might look also into the carbon prices in these scenarios. We might look into the system costs that are needed to achieve these scenarios. And as an illustration of that, we have already done a first study for this use case. And we published a paper last year where we looked at the effects of a global energy efficiency increase along all demand technologies in the context of decarbonization, in the context of climate scenarios compatible with the Paris Agreement. So we want to follow up with a similar study, similar paper, but where we fully implement the Y toolkit also in our models and take advantage of the possibilities that offers.
And you can find the paper already on the Y project website.
Yes, the paper is in the Y project website, and it's an open access paper, so anybody can download it and read it and study it. And we are welcoming all questions and comments, of course, on that.
Perfect.
That's a very good question, and that's an open question. It's a hot topic for us now, as we are starting to implement the Y toolkit and seeing the impact that it might have in the results. So you have to put it in the right context, in the sense that this is a global model that represents all sectors of the economy and energy use in all those sectors and trade. So you change small things, you can't expect a very big change. Let's put it like that. But when your aim is to identify certain patterns and zoom in into especially the residential energy use, which is the main focus, I would say, of the Y project, then it can make a difference, and it makes sense to look at that in the right level of detail that is, let's say, tailored to the type of questions you want to address. So we do expect that to have a contribution in this sense.